I'm Jerry Furkenstedt, and I'm here today to present the Hermes Web Voter's Guide. This is Hermes Web, and I'm going to use this at times today to help show what I'm talking about. The idea of democracy that was told to me was like, if I use this web, it was like saying all these different parts, all these different groups of people, all these different things that matter and people believe in. Democracy has to find this place in the middle, in the core, to kind of make it all work. These days, when I look around, that's not what I see very often. Sometimes what I see, if I use this little barrier, and I use this little barrier to kind of section off these different colors. So in the old days, before people could carry around tiny cameras and put something on the internet before they left the room, a politician could go around, and when he spoke to this group, the yellows, he would give them the yellow message and not talk about this other stuff. Then the next day he might talk to the red people, and he would tell the red people what they wanted to hear. And they would be very happy with him. And the next day he'd talk to the green people and give them the message they wanted to hear. And there wasn't anyone creeping around filming him talking to the greens and showing it to the reds. And so pretending to be a democracy doesn't work as well anymore. Now I think we might have a different problem, which is I think politicians have promised a lot of things. They often, while trying to get elected, will name off various problems like the cost of insurance and the price of drugs that people need for their health, and climate change, and well, there's all kinds of things people can point to, export, import, immigrants, different things like that. And once they get elected, it seems like those things that they were pointing to before and saying, oh, these are all the problems the person before me didn't look at. See, I'm going to flip them up so you can see them, and these are the things I'm going to change. But all too often, then, as they get into office, those things don't change, either because they don't feel like it, it's too much work, or maybe the other side works so hard against them, it's almost impossible to do anything. Well, eventually, the people that are attached to these things and impacted by them every day, get kind of fed up. They get kind of pissed off. They are tired of waiting. And then I think we have people who come along in this election and say, I'm going to change things. It's going to be different this time. We're not going to do it that way anymore. We're tired of those people that, you know, they're bought into Wall Street and they're bought into the insurance companies and big pharma. So, I mean, they're paying for their election. So what do you think is going to happen after they're in office? So a lot of people are saying, I'm tired of listening to those promises. I want someone that's going to go out and get things done. That can be kind of nice, but I think there's another problem we have to think about. I think I've seen this developing for a while in our country. I wouldn't call it deep democracy. I'd call it totalitarian democracy. It's kind of the idea that if I run for office and I win, then I get to run everything. I get to decide where we're going. I don't have to, the people that didn't vote to me, I don't have to listen to them. They're not Americans anymore. Americans vote for me. The people that don't vote for me, they can just go down here and wait until they elect someone else that'll represent them. Like I said, I think that's kind of like totalitarian democracy. If you win, you get the whole pie, and you don't have to share it with anyone that didn't help you win the pie. Now, when I was thinking about the current politics, I also found myself thinking about The Dark Knight, the Batman movie that had Heath Ledger in it playing the Joker. There's a particular scene in that movie that, to me, seems a lot like the Republican establishment's alarm with what's going on and saying, oh my God, we can't let him win. In that scene, the Joker has gathered up millions and millions of dollars and put them in a big pile in a room. the other criminals in the town, all the leaders of the various criminal groups have gathered together, and they're going, wow, look at all that money. And they're thinking, what's my cut of that going to be? And then the Joker starts pouring gas on it all, and then he lights it on fire, and they're like, what the hell are you doing? And it's kind of like, he's basically saying, I don't play by any of the rules you guys play by. This is my game now. You guys can go, get lost, disappear. I don't care. I don't need you. I've got my people. And that scene kind of makes me think of part of where the election is at these days. Now, I think another thing that happens that makes me think a lot about Hermes Web is also going on. When I was first introduced to Hermes Web, the guy who had invented it talked about how for something to be true, to be a core truth, you had to be able to see it from several different angles, and it was still true. Like maybe you had to look at it through chemistry and physics and literature and biology and philosophy, and if you could see it from several angles and it still held up, it was probably a real deal. I think these days what seems to happen is people stake out one particular way of seeing things. Again, they put that barrier in, and it's like, this is the real world. You vote for me, this is the world we'll live in. And we don't have to worry about the rest of these people. And that, I think when people look at it, something from a certain angle, they see a truth. But I don't think it's the whole truth. In a democracy, the whole truth comes from looking at it from all these different ways and figuring out what works. What works that'll honor and somehow include and take into consideration all these different truths at the same time. When you go to court, you take a vow to tell the truth, but they don't leave it at that. They say the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So that's quite different. The whole truth and nothing but the truth. Someone can tell the truth, but leave a lot of things out or add a few things in. And again, I find myself thinking, gosh, this just doesn't sound like the democracy I was taught about when I was a kid. In a democracy, the citizens have to be informed, and they have to go out of their way to make themselves informed about things. They sort of have to figure out what is the truth or what is the whole truth about things so that they make informed decisions, and then they elect people who represent their informed state. I don't see people working that hard to figure out the truth. It's more like this person up here speaks to a truth in me, and when that truth gets spoken to, because it hasn't been spoken to very much, I feel really good. I feel powerful. I wake up. I have hope again. But it may not be the whole truth, might leave a bunch of stuff out and might be contradicted by a whole bunch of other stuff. And you know what I call people like that? Politicians like that? I call them shadow kings, because I think they're using people's frustration, their sense of being ignored, their anger, their rage at some of the issues that are going on aren't being tended to. And that person kind of speaks to that, and that gets that riled up, kind of connects to that, and that's the fuel they're going to use to get their rocket going to win that election, get themselves in that position of power. And to be honest, that worries me if that's the path someone is taking. Just because someone shines a light into part of this darkness, part of this frustration, doesn't make it right. Shine a light, make it right? Don't know. I think it was sometime in the last year I thought I heard that Congress had an 8% approval rating. It's like, are you kidding? I think extraterrestrials would rate better than that, you know. Even if they were coming to destroy us, people would still be curious. 8%, that's terrible. Once someone gets in a position of power in a totalitarian democracy, they can say, well, if it's not going my way, I won't play. Ain't going my way, I ain't gonna play. So things just get stuck. They don't get done, they don't happen. When you have this other kind of deeper democracy, in order to keep this place in the middle alive, to have a democracy that's living and functioning and breathing, these parts have to talk to each other. And it made me think some about, I'm a psychologist and I deal a lot with group therapy, and they sometimes talk, bad group therapy is when the therapist sits in the center and talks to each of the different parts one-to-one. That's a little bit like campaigning. I'm going to campaign to the yellows and I'll campaign to the green, but ain't necessarily going to connect them up. And it also kind of means someone puts himself in the middle and sort of like, this is now mine. I'll decide how it's going to go. But in good therapy, no one sits in the center. But everyone tries to connect with everything else to kind of make a connection, to make people feel heard and seen and valued and kind of work those things out. This person over here might see some stuff about this that's they don't see, or this person doesn't see, but it kind of gets worked. It kind of, those differences become the fuel for something deeper, something more community, something more intimate, connected, nurturing, alive, cognizant of the things around us. I ask myself, should I just forget the things I was taught when I was a kid? Is that old-fashioned? But in my mind, they kind of made sense. It made sense. And when I look around today, I just don't see those basic principles being honored or taken care of. I see mutations of them that are happening that kind of worry me. Like, for instance, this is a Hoberman sphere. I sometimes think of the Hoberman sphere as the human core, as being like this place right here, where everything's connected together. So we have a core, and if someone's trying to become our leader, they have a core. And so you have to ask, what is in that core? Have we seen it? Do we know what it is? Well, many of you might recognize this little doodad here, especially since we're back in the Star Wars world again. And this is a little pod with Darth Vader in it. So that's one. And then we have another pod. You open it up, and you have Yoda. Now, anytime we're asking, well, what's in the core of this person? What are they really going at? In a way, what we're asking is it something like Yoda that lives in there? And that's what we're going to end up with? Or is it something like the Death Star? And sometimes I think, well, if what's in the center of this doesn't think climate change is real, even though 98% of all scientists do, and the majority of people are now starting to see it in their everyday life and in ways it affects people, like in Minnesota. Gosh, we just don't have those snowmobile winters anymore. You can't even go skiing all winter anymore because there often isn't snow. And our moose are dying because it doesn't get cold enough to kill the parasites that are on them, and the parasites suck the life out of them. But hey, according to Congress, that's not happening. So I probably don't need to worry about it. But maybe that's why they have an 8% rating. It's just a bad show. It doesn't get good ratings. But I think if we're going to vote for someone, we need to think about what's at the core. Is it a vision of life that's enhancing the life, that's trying to pay attention to a bigger picture and manage that somehow? Or is it something that's trying to just say, well, now that this is mine, I'm going to take it the way I want it to go, and the rest of the world, if they don't like it, screw them. You know, we have the right to do what we want to do. So, I think part of the message in all this kind of voter's guide is, in my mind, if you want a functional democracy, you got to do your homework. You got to take some of the issues that affect you and not just hear this take or that take on it, but do some work, figure it out. And if you're going to use the internet to do that, be a little careful. Who's putting that stuff out there? But do that work so that you're informed, and then you have a better idea. It's sort of like saying, well, I'm informed, and I want someone who recognizes that informed stuff if they're going to represent me. I want someone to represent that informed state, not someone who's going to pat me on the head or promise the things I want, and then once they're in office, they just do what they want to do. So I think that's a real crucial thing we need to do. We also need to kind of think about, well, when we look at the characters out there that are running, I think it's good when people can say, we absolutely got to change. We got to quit ignoring certain things. That makes total sense. But again, it's like, who's going to help that big picture? Who's really going to work all those pieces? You know, who's going to do that work, and who's going to challenge the people that vote for them to do that hard work too? And are we trying to move forward with that complex sense of all those things needing to be managed and interconnected and worked out? Or are we just looking for someone to shine a light on that place in us and make us feel like, yeah, I'm right. And let's get rid of all this stuff that's been frustrating me all these years. How would I sum that up? I think that when you're being informed, you're not ignoring things. If you're not ignoring things, you're not ignorant. If you're not ignoring things, you're informed. If you're informed, you're going to make informed decisions. Informed decisions work better for everybody. And everybody doesn't have to be happy. Everyone doesn't have to feel like they're right all the time. We need something alive at the core of our society and our culture and our world, and something that represents, recognizes, takes seriously, and works with all those differences that go into something. Democracy is often called the melting pot. So there's something cooking in here that has a lot of different ingredients, and we need to take care of that. And I think that it would be just absolutely the wrong thing to let someone come in and say, well, this one, these are the real people, and anyone who doesn't see it this way, they belong down here, they don't belong, they're not real, they don't have value, they're not valid. Not only is that not democracy, I think that's dangerous. I think that's what causes eventually the stuff down here is going to get unhappy, it's going to boil over, it's going to flip up. And when it flips up, it isn't going to act nice. It's going to be disorganized and ugly. And when we ignore things long enough, we create this sort of nasty stew that comes kind of exploding outwards. And I think we need to kind of get rid of the barrier as a staple in our national politics and try to think about, how do we find a leader? How do we elect someone who can facilitate this connecting, as opposed to people staking things out and saying, this is the real thing, that's the real thing, this is the real thing, and all fighting to see which one of them wins. But anyway, that's I guess the stuff I got growing up in a small farming community that's still sticking with me. And I think it's worth thinking about. Thanks.